I thought I had control over my life, my engagement, and my future. It turned out that I slept through the most important warning signs. When I finally opened my eyes, there was a stranger standing in my hallway kissing the woman I was supposed to marry. This is the story of how I got out of it without breaking and what I learned about boundaries, proof, and not negotiating my dignity. My name is Jonathan, 24 years old, and was engaged to Anna, 26 years old. We became a couple when I was 19 and she was 21 at an evening with mutual friends. I didn't have anything special then, more than a drive that didn't quit. She saw it and said early that I would become something. I fell for her radiance, her humor, and the way she could take a room without pushing anyone aside. Today, I am a graduated chemical engineer and was quickly promoted to a junior management position. She worked as a nurse in the ER, quick in the head and quick on her feet. I lean toward the analytical and have a simple view of relationships. One man, one woman, one relationship. That goes far if both are serious. About 3 months after our engagement, things started going the wrong way. There were no big scenes, just small shifts. She became more self-absorbed, worked more overtime, answered shorter, spent more time on herself, and less time on us. Intimacy drifted apart, first by a day, then a week, finally sparse islands that didn't feel like before. I asked directly and got direct answers that didn't say anything. There was nothing. She was tired. She was stressed. It was just the shifts that drained her. It was reasonable the first time, less reasonable the 10th time. I tried to be grown up. I did my part, trained, did my job, cooked, did laundry, asked how she was. She said I shouldn't worry. I decided to believe her because that version of reality is more comfortable than the alternative. But somewhere in my chest, a little engine started running without stopping, a gut feeling that wouldn't quit. I thought that if I'm the one who always wants evidence in the lab, then I should be able to ask for evidence in my own living room. One evening, I pretended to fall asleep. I breathed heavily, turned slowly. She lay still at first. After a while, she slid out of bed as quietly as she could, took her phone, snuck out. I heard whispers from the living room. Not the words, just the pattern that arises when you don't want to wake someone. I got up, placed my steps where the floor didn't creak. From the doorway, I saw her sitting on the couch. The screen reflected on the wall. She was on FaceTime with someone. I couldn't see who and didn't hear anything I could use. I stood there too long and went back before I did something stupid. The next day, I was anything but efficient at work. I went home, waited until she fell asleep, tried to open her phone. No fingerprint, no code I tried worked. She had changed something. I stood in the kitchen with a feeling in my body I can't put into words. I called the one who always takes things practically, Morgan. He's been my friend for a long time. He works as a plumber, self-employed, always overloaded with work, but still chooses to be available when it's burning for someone he cares about. He answered the call, even though he was on a construction site. He didn't ask me to calm down. He asked me to gather facts. Don't do anything big until you know, he said. Don't make any decisions you can't take back until you're sure. He gave me 3 pieces of advice in short points. 1. Act normal and leave no traces that reveal you suspect. 2. Secure finances and access. Passwords, 2-factor, subscriptions, insurances to be able to move quickly if you have to. 3. Get proof that can't be explained away, but do it legally and without drama. The last was the hard part. He also said something that stuck with me. You're used to measuring and verifying. Do that here too. Gut feeling is an alarm, not a verdict. The next day, I walked around the apartment and looked at things as if they were diagrams. The mail on the hallway table, her bag on the couch, blankets that smelled of perfume I didn't recognize. I tried to keep a log in my head. I refrained from asking more questions. Instead, I ordered 2 small cameras online, one for the door, one for the living room. I didn't tell anyone else. I had no desire to be the one crying wolf and then have to eat it if I was wrong. I wasn't sure. I was just ready to be. Several days, nothing happened. I felt like a bad version of myself. Suspicious, observant of the wrong things. I did my job. It did me good to perform somewhere. At home, I was polite, moderate, boring. She was away more often. She said it was shift changes and overtime. I know how healthcare is. It wasn't unlikely. It was just too much of the unlikely at once. Then everything happened as if someone snapped their fingers. I was pulled away for work in another state. 2 days away. I went. I felt like I left something unwatched, even though I had set up surveillance. I did my job on site. At the hotel, I checked the camera at the door. First night, nothing. Second night, I saw the door open from the inside. Anna, in a bathrobe. She had that look she has when she's aroused. A man came in. They kissed immediately, without hesitation, as if it was their choreography. Her bathrobe slipped off. She had nothing underneath. I saw more than I needed. I turned it off. I became calm. I called Morgan. I said I have what I need. He said, come here, not home. I drove to him and Nora, his wife. I've known Nora almost as long as Morgan. I was the one who sat them next to each other the first time in middle school. They received me at the door without questions. We sat in their kitchen and talked old memories. No one forced details out of me. No one asked me to think positive. I drank more than usual, and it did exactly what I wanted. Numb the sound of my body so I could think clearly in my head. The next morning, I made a plan. I wanted to end it, not play. I texted Anna that work had been extended. I'd be a day late, home Friday. Nothing more than that. She replied that she was tired and that it suited. That made things easier. When she went to work on Friday, I went home to the apartment and picked up my things. I knew what was mine. I took all documents, my computer, my external drive, clothes, shoes, a few keepsakes I didn't want to leave. I left the rest. I left the key on the table. I cleaned up after myself. As an explanation, I didn't leave a long letter. Long letters invite to a discussion I didn't intend to have. I left a printout, a still from the film sequence from her hallway. It clearly showed her lying over a table with him behind. It couldn't be misinterpreted in any way. On it, I wrote briefly where she should post the engagement ring. On the counter, I left a USB stick with the remaining material. Just facts that can't be talked away. I also decided to do something I don't usually like, but which I considered necessary to preempt an alternative version. I sent a cropped picture of a kiss in our hallway to her parents, with a short, neutral line that I had ended the engagement because of her infidelity. I wrote that I was grateful for how they had treated me and that I respected them both. I also explained that I didn't send the picture to expose her, but to avoid being the one who had to explain myself if she chose to shape another version. I didn't send anything to mutual friends. I kept it to the necessary circle. My own parents got my version over the phone. My friends were told it was over, period. Then the storm began. The phone went hot. Her name flashed across the screen again and again. I didn't answer. I have no obligations left. When someone has crossed the line we would never cross. She wrote long messages. I read them when I had the energy, not when they arrived. The pattern was the same. She explained it was a colleague, that it just happened, that she didn't think it was that bad since our sex life had been sparse, that she didn't want to forsake her desire just because I didn't want it as often. She wrote that she loved me and that it was only physical. She wrote that I was obliged to listen to her explanation. She wrote that I would regret it if I didn't give her that chance. I didn't answer her. I did answer when her parents called. They called in shock. They wanted words, not pictures. I gave them words in 4 points. 1. I disliked sending the picture to them, but I didn't want anyone to smear me with another story afterward. 2. I will not speak ill of their daughter. 3. I will not continue in a relationship where monogamy is secretly renegotiated. 4. I wish her a good life, but not with me. They said they understood. They apologized. It's not easy to be a parent in that situation. I don't need to make it harder. My own parents called first when they saw I wasn't home. I was at Morgan and Norris. I have no problem saying I needed a home where someone made coffee without asking. I laid the cards on the table. They didn't need films. They needed to know how I was and what my plan was. I repeat that word because it is everything when you are in a crisis. Plan. When you have a plan, the body can stop running in circles. You can focus on what's coming, not just dwell on what has been. The plan was simple. Day 1, end secure move. Day 2, clean up finances and assets. I went through subscriptions, electricity, internet, streaming, insurances. I stopped auto payments that were on me, but used by us. I changed passwords on all my things and added 2-factor where it was missing. I removed her as potential beneficiary on things where it had remained since we thought everything was forever. We didn't have a joint account, which I was now thankful for. I wrote everything down in a list and ticked it off. The list became more effective therapy than anything else just then. I arranged housing via sublet that a colleague tipped me about. Small, ugly, perfect. I needed a place where I could be alone and where I didn't carry history in the walls. I moved in with 2 bags, 1 box, and my coffee maker. Morgan helped me carry. Nora sent me with food containers and said I didn't need to return them until I had the strength. Some gestures way more than they look. Meanwhile, the texts kept coming. Anna did what many do when confronted with evidence they can't shake. She switched tracks, from apologies to explanations to accusations to pleading. I read everything with the same gaze I use when I review measurement data that doesn't add up. Is there anything here that requires me to adjust my conclusion? No, nothing new, just repackaging. When she wrote that I had also done wrong by not wanting as often, I read it twice to make sure I wasn't sloppy with self-criticism. There are always things one can do better. But this wasn't a matter of adjustment. It wasn't me who had rejected her when she wanted to be intimate. It was she who rejected me. And that was because she had someone else on the side. There was surely talk in different circles. Some mutual friends reached out, wondering. I held my line. It's over. I wish her well. I move on. It took about a month for the pulse to return to normal. I noticed it in small things. I stopped picking up the phone every time it vibrated. I started tasting the food again. I started taking longer walks home after work, not to clear my head, but because it was nice. I managed to read more than headlines. Anna wrote fewer messages. The last ones had a different tone. They were more about her realizing I was serious. There's something strange about how clear some people become only when you're no longer standing there. She apologized in one of the last. It was short and without embellishment. It made no difference for me. I don't need people who are flawless. I need people who keep agreements even when it's hard. That's the whole point of agreements. After a couple of months, I ran into her by chance. I came out of a cafe where I had been on a date. She stood in front of me suddenly. It almost looked like she had waited for me. She didn't look me in the eye, but she didn't let me pass either. There was silence for a few seconds, and then she asked if I was dating. I answered that I was. It looked like she had just been crying. She asked how it was, and I answered that it's starting to return a little to something a little more normal. I asked her, but she didn't answer. She just shook her head a little. But nothing more was needed. I could see it on her. Slumped shoulders, red eyes, and bags under her eyes. I was a little surprised. It had been over 2 months, and she had herself chosen to have a guy on the side. So why is she sad? I didn't understand. It should be much easier for her to get over this than it is for me. I asked if she was still together with or seeing him, but she shook her head. She explained what had happened. Apparently, this man had started contacting her at work. It was sporadic at first about work-related things, but after a while it became more personal. She started feeling that he was interested. After some time, they started messaging each other outside work hours. Pretty soon they met for coffee and movies when I was away on work. The more personal topics they talked about, the more she started feeling the thrill. That feeling you get when what you do is forbidden or on the border of forbidden. She liked the feeling, and pretty soon she sought it. That meant their conversations shifted into more and more explicit topics. She said she couldn't think or see clearly. It was she who asked if he wanted to have sex with her. He said yes. It turned out they had been going on for about 1 month before I caught them. At work, at our home, and at his home on occasional times. He was older and had children, so it wasn't that easy to be there. I asked why she didn't continue with him. Now she was free to do exactly what she wanted. But she said that when I disappeared, she realized what she was doing and ended it all with him. She also quit the job. I still don't understand. She was free. She could have continued with him without having to hide. Why didn't she? She said it wasn't real, and when I disappeared, the thrill disappeared, and then nothing remained. She liked the feeling when it was forbidden and exciting, but when that disappeared, it was over. So I asked if she threw away our relationship for something completely meaningless that couldn't survive if I disappeared. If the only foundation it rested on was that I was humiliated and betrayed, I got no answer. She broke down and started crying. She bawled so loudly that people turned around. An old lady gave me the stink eye. She probably thought I was being mean to her, but I wasn't. Well, maybe that question was a bit too confrontationally phrased, but it wasn't really mean. There was nothing more sensible to get out of the situation, so I started to walk away, but she held me back. Between sobs, she asked if I would want to try again. Later, when everything had settled, I said no to that question, and she started bawling again. This time I left. It's about a year since I last saw her. I've moved on. I live in a new relationship and am happy. Maybe a little scarred after what happened. I'm still sensitive to red flags in my partner, but I feel like I'm starting to relax. My new woman works at the same workplace as me. She was project manager in one of the projects I worked on. That gave us lots of time to.
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.